Real-time Sovryn is go.
Whoa, hey, did not see you there. Welcome to, I guess, another real-time Sovryn. I had a lot of people ask me what I thought about the Made by Google event on August 13th, 2024. And as over the past really couple years, I had been swimming in Apple's ecosystem pretty much exclusively, pretty much, from using everything, AirPods, iPhone, Mac, Apple Card, Apple Wallet, all that stuff, all great stuff. Really, really, really is. Apple has absolutely, in my opinion, set the standard for, what any ecosystem, any tech ecosystem, should do. And there really isn't much that comes super close, but I think that there are companies getting, working towards that direction. And I don't think there's a problem with that. I don't, I can definitely see, when watching the Made by Google event, which I did, I can definitely see in the Pixel 9 series and even, the Pixel Watch 3 and everything. It's like, oh yep, they're copying Apple, And it's like, well, why not? They kind of perfected the form and feature set. And in so doing, it'd be like GM, inventing like some weird ass looking steering wheel, that wasn't a complete circle, and Ford, still using the circles or something. And it's like, no, why mess with perfection, right? Or with what works anyway, with what works very well. So I certainly saw that. I have to admit, just going to adjust my microphone here. I have to admit, watching it, that because I was really impressed by WWDC this year. Everything that Apple was going to put out, as far as Apple Intelligence goes, I was like, you're doing this right. You're doing this right. Even with inventing basically your own cloud server structure, that's, more private and everything, like all this stuff. Right moves. If you're interested in generative AI. Okay. Now I guess I should start this off with a little bit of a caveat. Like, there's no such thing as privacy and smartphones. Not really. Okay. Because yes, you can have some degree of security and privacy. Okay. With a smartphone, but ultimately you're still beholden to what Apple may do with your data or what Google may do with your data. Now, it does appear that honestly, both companies, and yes, this does include Google, are moving in the direction of data minimization, where they don't want to be responsible for the data that they have about you. Okay. In fact, a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of Google's legal language in their EULAs, right, their end user license agreements, in their EULAs, reads very much verbatim like Apple's does these days. Anyway, so now, is Apple, more private than Google by and large? Yes, though that's not as clear a picture. Okay, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but particularly so Apple is more private if you completely buy into their ecosystem and you take advantage of all of the privacy features that they give you. The irony is the same is also very true for Google. If you are fully into, like the Pixel space in particular, okay. Now this doesn't apply to like Google Docs or whatever. We know the legal language around that. Basically that, you can't sue us if something happens to whatever's in Google Drive, and blah, blah, blah. Like we know that score. So I'm not necessarily arguing for using that. There's all kinds of problems with wanting to use, say Google Docs for everything. I know writers, not myself, fortunately, even though I do write erotica as well, but I know writers who do write erotica, and they lost access to their Google accounts because they were writing erotica, in Google Docs. And, that sucks because like a lot of these AI features, generative AI features to be particular, and we need to be particular about that. We're not talking about artificial general intelligence. We're not talking about any other applications or military applications of artificial intelligence. We are talking singular solely about generative AI. Okay, got that? All right. I don't need a bunch of stuff in the comments, but AI, but nothing. Okay. It's just generative AI, and we're already seeing the milk sour around generative AI among both consumers as well as investors, and basically everybody under the sun. And good, because let's get to the point where what's useful stays and throw away the rest of the crap. There's a very good chance, honestly, that OpenAI won't exist in 5 or 6 months. I think there's a very good chance of that. Okay. And actually, this event just hit the mic. This event, I think the Made by Google event kind of proved the point. So, because here's what happened. Okay. Basically, you have everything that OpenAI has been doing with ChatGPT, which OpenAI is definitely the Cadillac of AI companies, for sure right now. But their lead is shrinking. Not only is their lead in generative AI shrinking, but they're losing runway in their ability to operate. Why? Because they're ultimately a one-trick pony. As in, they do ChatGPT. I mean, yeah, they do DALL-E 3. They do some other things, but generative AI is all they do. They can't rely on money from an everything store like Amazon does. They can't rely on Microsoft 365 subscriptions like Microsoft does, while still operating, a fully functioning generative AI ecosystem with Copilot. It's based on ChatGPT, sure, right, but we've already seen what happened when Sam Altman was kind of kicked out of, or attempted. It was more of an attempt, a bit of a coup to get him out of OpenAI. I mean, Microsoft is just going to bring him in and bring in all the engineers and everything. This is the point I'm getting to with this is, you can't be a one-trick pony in this world. Okay. And especially do really cool shit. Like, you have to have something that pays the bills, and then there's the cool shit. Rarely do the two mix. All right. So we know OpenAI is running basically on borrowed time. Will they just get consumed by Microsoft? Yeah, I could see that ending up happening. So back to WWDC with Apple. My concern with Apple Intelligence is we have really no real timeline when 80% of these features are ever going to be fully implemented, as in not just released to the public in some kind of beta form, but not in beta anymore and not prone to mistakes and whatever else. Though certainly we could talk a bit about mistakes that when you talk about Google and AI, they've certainly had their share with their AI summaries in search. But this is a big problem with Apple. As much as I think they did all the right things, they made generative AI something useful to the consumer. They created features and will hopefully someday, even though Apple has a great track record of not delivering certain features that they announce publicly, ever. They really, and when I say great track record, I mean that as a pejorative. But, again, we just don't know when that's going to drop. So here's the amazing thing with the Made by Google event, okay, is everything they talked about that Gemini and Gemini Advanced are going to do, it's shipping. You're going to hold it in your hands in, a couple weeks or so, or about a month or so, depending when you get your Pixel 9 series. And there's something to be said for that. Like I said, forget about privacy. Just don't. Okay. Don't talk to me about that. Do I care about privacy? Absolutely. Okay. 100%. But there's no privacy in a smartphone. Like those, talk about things that don't mix, those don't mix. Okay. So, the Pixel 9 series, or what I was going to get to earlier also with Google. Okay. For example, like if you're fully into the Google ecosystem, like I said, forget about Google Docs and all that stuff. Okay. But if you are in their hardware ecosystem, there's actually a lot of really cool shit being done that not even Apple's doing, right? For example, if you have a Pixel phone, and I think it works with some high-end Samsung phones as well, but if you have a Pixel phone and you use Google Fi, there are a ton of security features and privacy features, as in anonymizing your location, things like this, that are a part, as well as the offering of VPNs, that are a part of, the Pixel ecosystem when you also use Google Fi. But so that's why I say it's comparable to Apple in the sense that, even though it's just a little bit different in how it does it, that there are security and privacy features when you do the full ecosystem play. But you have to do the full ecosystem play. And Google, I think, was very smart to actually have a telco, have their own MVNO, right? Their own phone service, not just phones, but their own phone service that can help put them over the top from a privacy perspective. Really. Now you could say, well, Pixel phones aren't as secure. No, but they're the closest to being as secure as iOS. And, I could get into whole arguments around the fucking file system on iOS is terrible. But but that's by design, right? It's meant to keep the user and other end developers from doing too much. It's a security feature, not a bug. I get that. It's just still annoying as fuck. Anyway, so I really, to the Made by Google event, I have to give Google credit. Like, that was just in some ways, from the failures, which made it feel very human, which is great when you're talking about AI. You still want that human touch to try and create some kind of trust. Not that, talk about another thing not mixing, the words Google and trust don't come together. But of course, granted, neither does Apple and trust, regardless. But I thought that the live event and the screw ups, were really helpful, and it was a far better showing than the nonsense, and which was really just an investor play. It wasn't meant for consumers. Really, never should have been. That being at the Google I/O event in May of this year of 2024. I thought that there was a very endearing presentation. They showed off a lot of things that are actually useful to people, a lot of features, some of which aren't even, they do have AI in the background on them, like pixel screenshots. It's funny, as soon as they announced that feature, pixel screenshots, where there's going to be a separate folder that is searchable by onboard AI to read, the screenshots that you take and everything for useful information or something that you're looking for and whatever. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh man, I do that all the time. Even on my desktop, I take screenshots of things, so like even from like Reddit, so I know where to find things, or I'll remember this trick, or, whatever. Screenshots are such a big deal, such a part of life, and to have like this separate folder for, it's such a simple thing, but it's genius on its own. I thought that was a very nice touch. Not only that, but again, everything they're talking about doing with photos and whatever, I could digress, or I could degenerate this. Well, that's funny. I'm wearing a Degeneration X shirt. Anyway, suck it. I could, degenerate the conversation into talking about how, because I've seen a lot of people complain about how, I'm not going to know what photos are real because of the new AI features that Google put into Pixel phones, where you can like add people and add smiles and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, but most people don't realize that 90% of the photos you take, 99% really, unless you're being very, very particular and you're using like completely different apps, and these do exist that allow for what would be called natural photography. But 99% of the time that you see people taking pictures with their smartphone, it is what should be called computational photography, meaning that the picture you end up with has already gone through a lot of computational processes that could easily be labeled, and should be really labeled, AI. Not artificial general intelligence. It's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about Skynet. We're talking about generative AI. Okay. It already goes through that process, right? For example, like night sight and all these other things to, like bring up, say the gamma on photos and allow the pictures to look brighter, even though they're taken in the dark, and all these things. All this goes through computational photography. Okay. There hasn't been a real picture online, I don't know, unless you scanned it with a scanner to your computer and then posted it on Instagram or something, which certainly I've done that at times. But unless you're doing that, and even then there's some debate, it's all computational photography. None of these pictures are fucking, genuinely reflecting reality. Okay. Part of the reason that a lot of people still use like handheld or, use-specific cameras and not just smartphones, as great as the cameras on smartphones are, and they are, a lot of times the reason people still do that is so that they can engage in natural photography. And there are even apps you can install that will take the natural picture, and you're going to see how shitty of a photographer you are. You thought, oh man, you thought you were just Austin Powers out there. Give it to me, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm spent, right? And you just throw it away. You thought you were that with your smartphone. Wait until you put a natural photography app on your phone, and you're going to realize just how fucking shitty you are at taking pictures. Okay? Just reality check. I'm here for you. But people don't know that, right? Like, and this is one of the issues with, like, a lot of the people complaining about the Made by Google event, and they're coming away from it, oh, this AI, oh, I'm so sick of it or whatever. It's like, no. Hey, slapnuts. You've already been using AI for 20 years. You just had no idea because nobody called it that at the time, because there wasn't a hype cycle, or because, it wasn't something that could impress investors, but you've been using the same fucking technology. Every single person who takes a picture with a smartphone is using generative AI ultimately. That's what computational photography is. End of story. So, people that come up to me and it's like, oh, I don't use AI. The fuck you don't. Do you use a computer? Do you use a smartphone? I guarantee you, somewhere in there, you're using AI all the time, and you love it, and it makes you feel better about yourself. Like I told you with your photographs. Give me a goddamn break. So in some ways, ultimately, as much as, I say that privacy and smartphones, don't put those two words together. You really can't say smartphone without saying AI. Like, AI has already been such a part of smartphones for so long, you don't even know it because it's just always been there and it's just always been useful. It's only now because you have muprons like Sam Altman who are trying to, sell some bullshit that suddenly, generative AI like has a name, or that, like the AI is suddenly like, part of the picture. Again, it's always been there. You just don't know it. You've always used it. You've been using it forever. So, with that in mind, all that caveating in mind, I thought the Pixel series, honestly, and the fact that it's going to actually, this stuff's actually going to ship, end of the month, and you don't have to wait a year or two or never for Apple to actually release those features outside of beta, even if they do come in beta form to the public or in public betas or whatever. The Pixel phone is the phone to get. I really feel that way. I mean, Samsung, is certainly, like, they have a great relationship with Google as well as Microsoft. And there's an argument to be made for, if you want the best Google features, get a Samsung, but you don't necessarily want Google for whatever reason, okay. But honestly, I think, especially at the pricing and everything that they were talking about and the design, and, I've used Pixel phones for years. I mean, you're listening to somebody who, literally has written the security guide on Android, the public security guide, I should say. And, I've been using these forever, but I also use Apple products. I have one right here. Woohoo. There you go. I use them all. But as far as what I would be doing right now, like if I was waiting this year, because I know a lot of people have been, I know a lot of you have been. It's like, I want to see who's going to make the big play with AI. And then that's the ecosystem I'm going to run with. Okay, if you're into generative AI. But like I said, you all are anyway, you just don't know it. If I were to do it, I'd be going with Pixel, with Pixel phones. And, if I was looking at an overarching, ecosystem play, it would probably be a Pixel phone as well. And then maybe like a Linux machine or a Windows machine as far as desktop goes. The nearby share feature in Windows is actually playing really well right now. It works like very much like AirDrop does on iOS. It's pretty nice. Yep, there's security concerns around Microsoft for sure, and there's all the jokes in the world that we can make about Microsoft, and yep, they really do suck. There's no argument from me on that. But I would probably, I would be going with Pixel, and getting into that right now. But what I would do between these devices, like I would not be backing up my photos to Google Photos. Like I mentioned earlier, I would not be writing in Google Docs. I would be going with the ecosystem play as far as services go, that is really genuinely competing with Apple and matching Apple, I would say, in feature set. And that would be like Proton, Proton Mail, Proton Pass, Proton VPN, all of that. So that's where I would go. Though if you are going to use a Pixel phone, I definitely recommend Google Fi if you can swing it, because there's just a lot of great security features there, anti-tracking features, among other things. That'd be a long list, and we're just doing a real-time Sovryn here, so I'm not going to get into all of that right now. Yeah, I mean, there's a security issue of, we know that some of the companies that create the devices that allow you to crack into smartphones, we're well aware, at least as of April of this year, that okay, they can't crack into smartphone or to iPhones that are above, I want to say, version 15.4 as far as iOS goes, whatever it was. And we know that they can't crack into a powered down Pixel phone, powered down. As to where, with the iPhone, it can actually be on and they can't crack into it. Samsung phones, I think, had a bad report on that. So anyway, powered down, a Pixel phone does pretty well for itself. Okay. Now, before anybody gets into the comments and starts talking to me, about, other operating systems like Lineage OS, and some of the others that are available that are like really hardened and secure. Yeah, you can certainly talk about that, but they're always mitigations of privacy. Okay. I just want to make that clear. Like, again, you can't have a smartphone and privacy in the same room at the same time. You just can't. Okay. And, once we accept that, all the better. So, the other reason that I don't mind recommending Pixel phones, again, everything I saw with the Pixel 9, as far as smartphones go, as far as that kind of conversation, phenomenal. Like, really, they're delivering the goods. I'm sure that Google can do this, but because the bootloader's actually open on Pixel devices still, which is part of the reason that they can be used for these other secure, OS Android alternatives. I think you can keep the device from getting shut down remotely, but I'm sure that's still possible. But like Samsung is very open about the fact that they can remotely brick your smartphone at their leisure. That's always been one of my big concerns with Samsung. So looking to the future, so there you have that, because it makes me think of looking to the future. One of the things the play I think Google should really do here, and I was actually hoping they'd announce it this year because there were news stories reported earlier in 2024 that Google was working hard on the Android desktop feature. Now, if you're a Samsung user or you're just a tech enthusiast to know about these things, there's a feature called Samsung DeX that high-end Samsung phones can use, where you can plug them in via USB-C or whatever into a dock even, and you can connect a monitor and a keyboard and and a mouse and everything, and all kinds of things, controllers, microphones, whatever. And you can use it. It'll take, like on the monitor, it'll take the shape of a desktop operating system. Like, and in fact, it looks very much like Windows 7, which I'd say is a good thing. Greatest operating system ever made, let's just call it. And that feature I really like. The idea that you could just have that one device that connects to everything and you can kind of do everything on. I really, really like that. I was hoping that Google would announce that that Android desktop, that feature, kind of their DeX-like feature, would be coming to Android 15. These phones are launching with Android 14, but they will be getting Android 15, of course, before anybody else, really, because even Samsung, has pushed back their Android 15 release, even though it's out of public beta. Anyway, I was really hoping that they would do that. I think so. I bring this up just to say that I think that Google should go full bore on that feature and basically get Pixel devices to the point that they can be a desktop replacement for many people. And for many people, I think they would be. Most people don't even need, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, I'm just saying it's a fact. Most people don't even need a full-on laptop or desktop computer. They just don't. They use their smartphone all the time. Nothing wrong with, I'm not even saying necessarily there's anything wrong with that. Okay? That's a choice. It's how you rock. But I think if Pixel devices could get to the point where they could have an entire desktop environment, and and like replace a lot of laptops and everything just by plugging into monitors and full-on keyboards and mice. Um, I think that's a play where Google, could really become more dominant force in hardware, which is really what they need to do, especially with their present legal troubles. They, I mean, there's rumors that with this antitrust case going on, that Google might have to spin out Android or whatever. And I mean, or they might have to spin out their Pixel devices or something like this. If they do, I mean, I'm not at the position to where I want to predict on what they would look like, but I think for Google to try and really compete to where they could live without, their search business, basically, which is ultimately what this antitrust case is all about, is their monopoly in search. To not rely on search, they basically need to become Apple. And the way to do that, I don't think is for them to keep concentrating on Chrome OS and Chromebooks. I think there's a place for those thin clients. There's a place for that in an interconnected world like we live in. Okay. But I think the place they need to do that from is turn their Pixel devices into the hardware that people want to use for everything. And I think they're heading in that direction, especially with a lot of what they're doing with Gemini Advanced. I think they have a real shot at this. And ultimately, you can say, well, Anthropic's doing this with AI, and OpenAI is doing whatever their thing with ChatGPT and all of this. Look, these companies might not be able to survive as to where Google can survive because they get funding from other things. It's like the parents have entered the room. Okay, that's really how it feels with Apple as well as Microsoft, and now certainly Google has, I think, taken a real lead because we don't know when Apple's going to release their shit. And until they do, it's just hopes and dreams, right? And just like, I mean, and granted, that's what 90% of the generative AI space runs on. It's like, oh yeah, in a few years it'll be able to do this. Oh, I can't wait. In a few years it'll be able to do this. That's not the way I roll. And I'm glad that Google's not rolling that way either. They're not talking about what they're going to do in a year or 5 years or 10 years. They're saying, no, we're doing this right now. Now, there's a lot of conversations to have around that. And of course, you want to hear those. You check out Sovryn-tech AI, or Sovryn-tech in general. Because you never know, that AI term might just like fall away, just like OpenAI, which I would clap so hard at that moment. And other people might say, oh, but Gemini as an AI, like its responses aren't trustworthy. It's a mess. It's blah, blah, blah. That is something where we are seeing provably better results out of that, into where Google is citing its sources when you ask it a question, as in it gives you the link at the bottom. We pulled from this, we pulled from this, we pulled from this, and things like that. So I think that they are working very hard, and it's not something that's going to get better a year from now. They're showing you it's getting better right now. Still not totally impressed by any of these generative AI models, but right now it's still kind of up to anybody who's going to end up on top. But my guess is it's going to be a company that does more than just generative AI, be it Apple, Microsoft, or Google. So, and where's Meta in all this? Don't even get me started. I'll leave you with that, and I will see all of you on the other side. Woo!